The words cut through smoke and sirens like a blade. "You're coming with me." Marcus Washington's flashlight beam sliced the darkness of Lexington Tower's east stairwell, catching the silhouette of a woman in charcoal suit, heels skidding on wet concrete, slick with sprinkler mist. One hand braced against steel railing, the other clamped to her ribs where fabric darkened with something that might be blood. Rain hammered the windows 27 floors up. Each drop caught orange glow from flames creeping the building's face like malicious ivy. Inside, emergency lights pulsed crimson, throwing shadows that danced like demons across smoke-choked corridors. Marcus stood firm in his maintenance blues, the fabric dark with sweat despite Seattle's October chill. His tactical flashlight, bought secondhand from a retiring firefighter 3 years back when money meant choosing between batteries and Isaiah's inhaler refill, cut through the haze with practiced efficiency. "Miss Sterling, main exit's compromised. Need you to follow me now." Elena Sterling straightened her spine. CEO of Sterling Biomedical, a woman who'd built an $800 million empire on the foundation of respiratory innovation, a woman who refused to bend, even as smoke curled around her ankles like grasping fingers. "I don't follow. I lead." The cough that ripped through her sentence betrayed every ounce of composure she fought to maintain. Her lungs, for all their billions in research funding, worked no better than anyone else's when filled with superheated particulate matter. Not tonight. Marcus reached forward, fingers closing around her forearm with a grip that said both, "I've got you," and "Don't argue." The building trembled beneath them. Somewhere below, something structural groaned like a dying animal. His phone buzzed in his pocket. 11:47 p.m., which meant he'd already broken his promise to Isaiah by 47 minutes. The boy would be awake, waiting, probably sitting in Mrs. Banks's apartment with that dragon book open on his lap, and worry creasing his 8-year-old forehead in ways no child should know. Fire spreading faster than it should. System failures on 3 floors. This isn't normal. Elena's eyes, gray like Seattle winter, narrowed through the haze. Intelligence sharpening despite oxygen deprivation. Sprinklers activated too late. Alarms delayed by almost 3 minutes. Marcus guided her down 3 steps. His movements carried the economy of a man who'd spent 12 years running into burning buildings before trading his turnout gear for a tool belt and the steady paycheck that came with being Sterling Biomedical's night maintenance supervisor. $48,000 a year. Enough to keep the lights on and Isaiah's prescriptions mostly current. Not enough for the surgery that would fix the problem instead of just managing symptoms. Someone wanted this fire to have a head start. A ceiling panel crashed behind them, sending sparks cascading like deadly fireflies. The stairwell door they'd just passed buckled with a metallic groan as heat warped steel into abstract sculpture. Marcus felt the temperature spike against his back even through 2 layers of cotton and the jacket he'd thrown over Elena's shoulders 3 floors ago. "How do you know this building so well?" His eyes never stopped scanning. Thermal bloom patterns on walls, smoke density gradients, the subtle sag and overhead structure that meant load-bearing compromise. Know every emergency exit, every maintenance corridor, every weak point. It's my job to know what breaks first when things go wrong. Another explosion rocked the foundation. Somewhere in the guts of Lexington Tower, something vital had ruptured. Gas line, maybe, or the backup generator's fuel reserve reaching critical temperature. Marcus's firefighter instincts cataloged possibilities, even as his maintenance supervisor's knowledge of this specific building narrowed the list. Elena stumbled. His arm shot out, reflexes honed by years of catching falling tools and unstable equipment, now catching a woman worth more than he'd earn in 20 lifetimes. She weighed less than he'd expected, hollow-boned like a bird, the kind of thin that came from forgetting meals when board meetings ran long. "Left." Her voice cut through his assessment, commanding despite the breathlessness. Her hand gestured toward a landing that branched toward the building's core. "Server rooms that way." Critical data. Right. Marcus's correction came gentle but absolute. his hand at the small of her back, a touch he'd never dare under normal circumstances, touching a CEO, touching a woman he'd only ever seen from a distance when she swept through the lobby with an entourage of executives, guided her toward the auxiliary corridor. Server room will be a furnace by now. Right, takes us to the auxiliary exit, the one with the bad hinge I've been asking facilities to replace for 6 months. Better odds. She gave him a look that might have been respect. Might have been the first time in her adult life someone had overruled her and been right about it. You catalog hinges? I catalog everything that could get someone killed. They turned into a narrowing corridor. The smell of wet drywall mixed with superheated metal created an acrid fog that clawed at throat tissue. Marcus pulled his shirt up over nose and mouth, gesturing for Elena to do the same with his jacket collar. She complied without argument. That told him more about her condition than any medical assessment. When a woman who'd spent her life commanding rooms started taking direction without pushback, oxygen deprivation was becoming critical. A young analyst appeared from nowhere, eyes wild with panic. Early 20s, probably working late on some project that wouldn't matter if he died in a stairwell before dawn. The kid's mouth opened, words tumbling out incoherent. I can't find the... Marcus pressed his flashlight into shaking hands, turned the beam toward the glowing green exit sign, barely visible through the smoke. Go. Don't run. Breathe through your collar. Head down. The analyst vanished into the haze. Marcus continued forward, using building knowledge and spatial memory to navigate what vision could no longer reliably provide. Elena's breathing had shifted. Shorter pulls. The kind of respiratory pattern that preceded collapse. Thank you. She said it so quietly he almost missed it beneath the fire alarm's shriek. Then, looking down at her sleeve where red seeped through expensive fabric, she added, I'm bleeding. Glass. Marcus observed without stopping their forward momentum. His eyes tracked the cut with the clinical efficiency of someone who triaged injuries in far worse conditions. Superficial. Keep moving. His phone buzzed again. The vibration pattern told him it was a call, not a text. Only one person would call this late. Marcus eased Elena to a halt near a junction box, checked the screen. Sophie, the contact read, though the name was a remnant from before, from when his daughter had still been alive, before cancer had hollowed out his world and left him with just Isaiah and the weight of 3 promises he'd made to a dying woman. Isaiah, his actual son, the boy who'd inherited his mother Keisha's artistic talent and her chronic respiratory disease. Hey, Bean. Marcus kept his voice calm, steady. The tone he'd learned to maintain during Keisha's final months, when every phone call might be the last one, when maintaining composure became the only gift he could give a woman watching her own systems shut down cell by cell. The small voice that filtered through carried sleep-fuzzy edges, but underneath ran a current of worry that no 8-year-old should carry. Daddy, you promised story time. I know. The building's having a bad night. Isaiah processed this with the matter-of-fact acceptance of a child who'd learned early that sometimes adults broke promises for reasons beyond their control. Is the building scarier than the Dragon Book? Marcus felt his mouth twitch towards something that might have been a smile, if circumstances allowed. About the same. Silence. Then, who's that? The question carried curiosity without accusation. Marcus glanced at Elena, whose gray eyes had fixed on him with an intensity that suggested she was cataloging this interaction for some future analysis. Elena. The name hung in smoky air. Elena's eyebrows rose fractionally. She hadn't expected to be introduced. Probably hadn't expected her rescue to involve a phone call with a child discussing dragons while surrounded by actual fire. Elena. Isaiah repeated the name, testing its syllables like a new flavor. Are you nice? The question cut through every corporate defense Elena Sterling had built over 42 years of clawing her way from dead parents and stolen patents to the executive suite. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. I'm working on it. Marcus heard something in her voice he hadn't expected. Honesty. raw enough to draw blood, the kind of truth people only offered when stripped of context and pretense by immediate mortality. "We're being very nice to emergency exits right now." His interjection diffused whatever moment had crystallized between his son and this woman he was carrying through hell. "That's good." Isaiah's approval came quick and certain. Then, with the laser focus only children possessed, "Daddy, don't forget your inhaler, in your left pocket. You always forget." Marcus's hand went automatically to the pocket Isaiah mentioned, found the plastic cylinder he'd tucked there 6 hours ago and forgotten about in the chaos of emergency response. A mirror of his son's medication. Same brand, different dosages. The genetic lottery that had given Isaiah his mother's talent for seeing beauty had also handed down her lungs' tendency to close like fists under stress. "Copy that. I'll be home soon." "Promise?" The word carried weight. Marcus had learned to be careful with promises after Keisha made him swear 3 things in her final coherent hour, after she'd gripped his hand with strength that shouldn't exist in a body reduced to 93 pounds and made him repeat them back until she was satisfied he understood. Take care of Isaiah. Everything for him, always. Don't let grief make you hard. Keep helping people. Be the man I fell in love with. Love again when you're ready. Isaiah needs a mother. You need a partner. I'm giving you permission. He'd kept the first 2. The third sat in his chest like a stone he couldn't swallow and wouldn't spit out. "I'll be home soon," he repeated to Isaiah, not quite answering because promises required certainty, and tonight offered none. "You better." Isaiah's voice carried the forced brightness of a child trying to be brave. "And Elena, be safe. Daddy always tries to save everyone." The call ended. Marcus pocketed the phone, aware of Elena's scrutiny. "You have a daughter?" "Son. Isaiah. 8. His correction came automatic. He checked the corridor ahead, confirmed their route remained viable, and gestured for Elena to continue moving. "And right now, we need to move." They pushed through a door that groaned on hinges Marcus had personally noted for replacement in his maintenance logs 6 months ago. The sound it made, metal on metal, grinding and wrong, would have been deafening if not for the fire alarm's constant shriek. They emerged onto a catwalk above a loading bay. Below, smoke rolled in slow, ominous waves. A metal dumpster smoldered like a solemn campfire, adding another layer of toxic particulate to the air quality. The alarm wailed, then chopped off mid-cry as backup generators kicked on with a deep mechanical hum that Marcus felt through the catwalk's metal grating. "Stairwell B will be jammed," Elena pointed as she spoke, her executive's mind still mapping options despite oxygen deprivation and blood loss. "C's under renovation." Marcus completed the assessment, already moving toward their only viable option. "D is rusty but honest." He caught her slight smile despite everything. The phrase had slipped out, one of Keisha's sayings. She'd used it for people mostly, applied it to the neighbors who brought casseroles after her diagnosis, but couldn't meet Marcus's eyes. To the oncologist who'd been blunt about prognosis when others offered false hope. To the building superintendent who'd given them 3 months' grace on rent when Marcus's savings evaporated into medical bills. "Like you," Elena said. The words carried observation, not flirtation. She'd slotted him into a category, filed him away for future reference, the same way she probably filed quarterly projections and pharmaceutical trial results. Honest, anyway. Marcus took the lead, testing each step before committing his weight. The catwalk swayed. Not catastrophically, but enough to remind them both that structural integrity was rapidly becoming theoretical. At the base of the catwalk, steam rose from a cracked pipe. Marcus brushed his palm near it, hissed at the heat, then angled his body to shield Elena as they passed. At the next door, he tugged. It stuck. Physics and fire damage conspiring against them. Marcus set his boot against the frame, leaned in, and the metal shrieked before giving way. They spilled into an alley that smelled of rain and hot wires and Seattle's urban heartbeat. The storm owned the night. Rain came sideways across pavement slick with reflected light. Police cruisers pulsed blue and red at the far end of the block, smearing color across puddles. Firefighters moved with orchestrated precision. Someone shouted Elena's name. She turned. Camera flashes sparked through the curtain of rain. Paparazzi with telephoto lenses wielded like weapons. Head down, walk. Marcus's hand found the small of her back again. The touch that had been about guidance inside the building now became about protection from a different kind of predator. You don't have to touch me. Elena's response carried reflex, boardroom conditioning, the automatic pushback of a woman who'd learned early that men's hands often came with expectations. Right now, I do. Marcus steered her beneath a metal awning, giving them momentary shelter. EMS had set up a triage tent, red crosses on white canvas. Paramedics moving between survivors with the efficient choreography of professionals who'd seen worse. You need oxygen. Elena opened her mouth with what he recognized as corporate reflex, the automatic refusal of help, the assertion of control. He watched her process the futility of arguing. She nodded instead, brief, sharp. The nod of a woman who knew when to concede tactical ground. Fine. Briefly, the paramedic who checked her vitals under the tent's protection moved with calm efficiency. Blood pressure cuff, pulse oximeter, stethoscope against her back. Breathe deep. Elena did. Winced. Pulse elevated. Oxygen saturation low. You need observation. She watched the numbers like stock tickers. Her CEO brain probably running calculations even now, assessing risks, weighing options. I'm very busy. I plan to live. The paramedic's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but acknowledging the dark humor that kept people functional in crisis. Ma'am, you really should. She will. Marcus's interjection carried the weight of someone who'd spent enough time in hospitals to know which fights to pick. He met Elena's gaze over the paramedic's shoulder. After we find you a ride. Elena straightened despite the oxygen mask hovering near her face. Her spine went rigid with the automatic resistance of someone accustomed to giving orders, not receiving them. A ride to where? My place. You're not going home, and the hospital's a press conference with needles. You presume? Her tone could have frozen whiskey, would have worked in a boardroom. Here, soaked to the bone and bleeding from glass cuts with her $800 million empire potentially burning behind her, it just sounded tired. Yeah, I'm presuming you value not getting trampled by strangers with lenses. Marcus nodded toward the reporters edging closer. Cameras raised, microphones extended like accusatory fingers. One shouted over the rain and sirens, "Claire, did you torch your own building for insurance?" Another voice, male and aggressive, "Hey Sterling, who's the janitor boyfriend?" Elena's eyes flashed anger and shame and something proud enough to refuse both. But the rain stole heat with equal efficiency, regardless of net worth. Marcus watched her process the reality, watched the calculation happen behind gray eyes, watched her arrive at the conclusion he'd already known she would. His voice dropped lower. Just for her. Look at me. She did. You can hold your ground here and give them a show. Or you can come with me and keep your power. That sounds like a line. It is. But it's true. Lightning split the sky into veins of electric blue. Thunder rolled off glass and steel, the sound arriving 3 seconds behind the flash. Marcus reached up, tucking a soaked strand of her hair away from her eyes with a hand so careful it felt like a promise. Just for tonight. You call the shots after. Something in her, a lifetime of command, a habit of control, met something in him, a lifetime of triage, a habit of protecting. Their edges found a fit neither had expected. Fine. Just tonight. A sleek black SUV nosed up to the curb, unmarked, windows tinted, door cracked to reveal a man's profile in the back seat. Expensive suit, expensive watch, everything about him expensive. Marcus shifted, blocking Elena's view instinctively. His body remembered training even after 3 years of maintenance work had layered over muscle memory. "That's yours?" Elena followed his gaze. Something crossed her face. Recognition. Wariness. Victor. She said the name like a warning flare. "He's not your ride." Marcus's tone carried finality. He'd made the decision without consulting her and braced for the fight. "You give orders like you own the place. I own a $4 door wedge and a pair of boots that know when to move." He tilted his head toward the far end of the alley, where his truck sat parallel parked between a dumpster and a fire hydrant. "My truck's that way." Cameras surged as they stepped out from the awning. A flash caught the exact moment Elena stumbled and reached for the only steady thing in the storm, the man in faded maintenance blues. Marcus's arm went around her automatically. In the instant before thunder swallowed the street, a lens captured it. Power in exile, leaning into the hands of a man no one saw coming. They vanished into rain so heavy it might as well have been a curtain. The truck's wipers fought a losing battle against Seattle rain, streaking the windshield into a blur of lights and shadows. Marcus drove with both hands on the wheel, jaw set, eyes scanning wet streets with the constant vigilance of someone who'd learned that catastrophe didn't announce itself. Beside him, Elena sat wrapped in his rain slicker like it was a lifeline she hadn't meant to take. Her phone kept lighting up on the console, calls from numbers she knew too well, but she didn't touch it. They turned off the main road, the city's hum fading into the low groan of wind through narrow streets. "You always drive this quietly?" Elena's voice carried steadiness, her trembling fingers contradicted. "Noise makes people miss what matters." She studied him through the darkness. "And what matters right now?" "That you're still breathing. That you're not out there in that mess." She almost laughed. The sound caught somewhere between her throat and her better judgment. "You say that like you've made a habit of collecting strays." Marcus's eyes stayed on the road. Only the ones worth saving. Before she could decide how to answer, they turned into a narrow driveway beside a squat brick building with peeling paint. A faded sign above the front stoop read, "Belmont Apartments," the kind of place you passed without noticing, the kind of place Marcus had called home for 8 years because the rent stayed stable, and Mrs. Banks in 2B didn't mind watching Isaiah when emergencies kept Marcus working past midnight. He parked and came around to her side, offering a hand she didn't take until her heel slipped on wet pavement and she caught his forearm. His grip was steady, unshakable. The kind of steady that came from holding dying people together until paramedics arrived. He didn't smirk or comment, just guided her toward the side entrance. Inside, the building smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and rain-soaked coats. A warm voice called from somewhere ahead. "Marcus, that you?" Mrs. Dorothy Banks stepped into view from an open door. 71 years old, with silver hair braided down her back and eyes sharp despite the hour. She wore a quilted robe and thick wool socks. Had known Keisha since the young couple moved in, pregnant and broke and hopeful. Had held Marcus together after the funeral when Isaiah was too small to understand why Mama stopped coming home. "Evening, Mrs. Banks. Sorry to bother." "You never bother." She cut him off with the authority of a woman who'd raised 5 children and buried 2 husbands. Her gaze shifted to Elena, taking in the damp hair, the suit, the exhaustion just under the surface. "And who's this? Don't tell me you finally brought home someone with better shoes than you." Elena blinked. She hadn't been read so quickly in years. Hadn't been reduced to component parts by someone who saw through net worth to the woman underneath. Elena Sterling. She extended a hand. Mrs. Banks took it with both of hers, the way grandmothers did when they wanted to convey warmth without words. "You look cold, mija, and tired." I'll make tea. That's not necessary. Elena started to protest, but Mrs. Banks was already bustling away. She'll be offended if you refuse. Marcus's tone carried gentle warning. And she's stubborn, trust me. They stopped at a basement door with 2 locks, 1 deadbolt, 1 latch. Marcus unlocked both, stepped aside for her to enter. The apartment was small, but not cramped. A narrow living room opened into a kitchenette. Beyond that, a short hall led to 2 bedrooms. The place smelled faintly of cedar and clean laundry. A shelf by the door held a jumble of boots, sneakers, and a tiny pair of pink rain boots that had clearly seen better days. This is home? Elena set her bag on the couch, the question emerging before she could stop it. Home enough. Marcus pulled off his jacket, hung it on a hook with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd learned that order created stability. He nodded toward the hall. Isaiah's room is down there. He's at his friend's place tonight. Sleepover. The lie came smooth, natural. Because telling her that his son was actually sleeping 1 floor up in Mrs. Banks's apartment, waiting for his father to come home from a shift that had stretched into near death, felt like exposing too much vulnerability. Her eyes drifted to a corkboard on the wall. Photos, mostly. Isaiah with Marcus's eyes but softer features. Scraps of paper covered in crayon drawings. One showed a stick figure man with what looked like a mop in one hand and a sword in the other. That's you? Elena pointed. Marcus followed her gesture, something like fondness crossing his face. Depends. If it's the mop, yes. The sword? That's artistic license. Mrs. Banks arrived a moment later, balancing 2 mugs and a plate of shortbread cookies. She set them on the coffee table with the no-nonsense efficiency of someone who believed sugar helped after shock. Eat, both of you. I'm fine, Elena began, but Mrs. Banks's raised eyebrow cut her short. Marcus watched her take the first sip of tea, watched steam curl against her face. For the first time since the fire, her shoulders dropped 1/2 inch. You said this wasn't a random fire. Marcus's voice stayed quiet. Elena's eyes met his over the rim of the mug. It wasn't. I smelled accelerant before the sprinklers kicked in. And the alarms, they shouldn't have failed. Not in my building. Your building. Marcus repeated it, not as a question. She gave a bitter smile. Not for long. Someone wants me out, and they're willing to burn everything to do it. His gaze stayed steady on hers. Any idea who? One name. Victor Lang. Controls money on the board, and because he's never forgiven me for voting him down 2 years ago, I stopped him from pushing through a merger that would have gutted the company. Before Marcus could respond, her phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen. The name Victor lit in white letters. She didn't answer, but Marcus caught the flicker in her eyes. Anger, yes, but also something else. Calculation. Why not block him? Because knowing what he's saying is safer than wondering. She set the phone down untouched. Outside, rain ticked against the small basement windows. Mrs. Banks returned to her apartment with a parting look that burned through Marcus's practiced neutrality. Weather's getting worse, she observed, eyes moving between them. Both ways. Marcus checked the deadbolt after she left, then turned back to Elena. You'll stay here tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest. Elena straightened, CEO armor reflexively reassembling. You don't even know me. I could be a terrible house guest. I'll take my chances. Besides, terrible house guests don't usually come with arsonists in pursuit. She surprised herself with a small laugh. Actually laughed despite everything. Despite the building potentially destroyed. Despite the career potentially ruined. Despite sitting in a basement apartment wearing a maintenance worker's rain slicker and drinking tea from a mug that said, "World's okayest dad." Do you always diffuse tension with dry humor? Only when it works. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. She leaned back into the couch, mug warm in her hands, and studied the man who had stepped into her disaster without hesitation. "Why help me?" she asked it finally, the question underneath all the others. His answer was simple, almost too simple. Because you needed it. And for reasons she couldn't name, that was enough for tonight. Marcus slid the second deadbolt home with a quiet click. The sound was small, but it settled something inside Elena she hadn't realized was rattling. She eased out of her ruined heels, ankle flexing where broken glass had nicked skin earlier. Pain flashed, then vanished, too minor to matter against everything else. 2 locks? Her question came curious, not critical. Basement wisdom. First lock keeps the weather out. Second keeps the world out. He crossed to the kitchenette. His movements carried economy. Kettle on burner, flame lit. Towel thrown over shoulder like he'd been born with it there. Elena stood in the middle of the little living room, unsure where to put her hands. She was accustomed to rooms that belonged to her. Corner offices with skyline views. Glass. Marcus opened a tin box labeled in block letters, First Aid. Pulled out antiseptic and gauze. He knelt, gentle without being careful in a way that would have insulted. His hands, close up, carried the history of their use. Knuckles nicked from 100 small battles with stubborn things. Calluses from tools and weight and years of work that left marks. Tell me if the sting's too much. I grew up with 3 older brothers and a backyard full of blackberry brambles. I can survive antiseptic. Her mouth quirked despite herself. He worked efficiently, no wasted motion, the kind of competence that came from practice rather than training. You do more than survive. That's your problem. She watched him work, unexpectedly caught by the observation, by the accuracy of it. The room hummed with quiet sounds. Kettle's low simmer, heater's old lungs, the city breathing through concrete. On the corkboard above the little desk, Isaiah's artwork tacked up like flags claimed after tiny victories. A purple dragon, a rocket ship, a smiling stick figure in blue uniform wearing what might have been a crown. Elena's gaze snagged on a printed schedule. Custody hearing, Thursday, 10 a.m. She looked away before she could read the notes underneath, before she could see the private pain spread across ruled lines. You run a building by cataloging hinges. She said it and realized it wasn't a jab. It was observation. Recognition of something she understood at bone level. The need to control variables, to know where failure would strike before it did. I run a life by knowing where things fail. He replied, taping gauze in place. His eyes flicked up to meet hers. And fixing what I can. Fix me. She said it lightly, like a dare, testing whether he'd take the bait. He didn't blink. I don't fix people. I stand next to them until they remember how to stand. She swallowed. It landed. It lodged somewhere behind her sternum, where words usually bounced off corporate armor. The kettle clicked off. He poured hot water into 2 mugs. The tea smelled like peppermint and something sweeter. Honey, maybe. He slid one toward her across the coffee table. You always keep your place this. She gestured at the room that somehow managed to be both spare and lived in. Orderly chaos takes more time. She should have argued with that. Instead, she heard her father's voice, the one who'd taught her to sort coins by year and shine tools after use, who'd said, "You keep things tight, kid. The world keeps fewer surprises." He hadn't believed it enough to stick around, hadn't stayed to watch his daughter learn that control was an illusion and surprises came whether you cataloged them or not. Her phone lit up on the coffee table. The name Victor Lang burned like a fuse. She let it go dark. It lit again. You're going to either answer or throw it at the wall. Choose the one you won't regret. Marcus's voice carried neither judgment nor advice, just observation. She exhaled through her nose, decision crystallizing. Answering it is the one I'll regret. Then put it on speaker, and don't stand close to a window. She smirked despite herself, Hit accept, set it to speaker. Victor. Her name emerged in velvet and voltage. Background noise suggested a car. Whisper of tires on wet streets. Claire. His voice was all polish, all performance. I hear you had a difficult evening. That's one word. I prefer avoidable. A pause just long enough to cut. You insisted on redundancy upgrades. They failed anyway. Because someone adjusted the timestamp. That isn't failure. That's intent. Careful. It's late. People say careless things when they're tired. Marcus moved without sound, wiped the counter, turned off the stove, positioned himself where he could see both her and the door. He was building a map the way some men built fires. Quietly. Necessarily. What do you want, Victor? What I've always wanted. For Sterling Biomedical to stop carrying dead weight. Elena's jaw tightened. And whose dead weight today? Another pause. His voice softened as if he'd leaned closer to the microphone. You, if you insist on making enemies of your friends. She laughed, not kindly. You are not my friend. Not at the moment, but I could be useful. You're in a difficult position. Optics are unfortunate. The board could be merciful if you demonstrated willingness to cooperate. Cooperate. She repeated the word like it was coded in something toxic. Resign gracefully, for a narrative hardens around you that will be difficult to sand down. She could see him in her head. Expensive suit, silver watch, office lit like a private chapel. For years he'd been the man who smiled when she was right and sharpened his knives when she was still right but inconvenient. Tell the narrative to watch its step. It's entering a place with 2 locks. Marcus glanced at her, surprised, then allowed himself the smallest grin. Victor didn't laugh. There's another matter. Of course there is. The arson investigation. You'll face questions, not just about insurance. His voice thinned until it was almost tender. About your habits, your temper, your relationships. The word hung between them like a drop of black rain. Elena stared at her own reflection in the dark TV screen. Relationships. She'd had 4 in the last 10 years. All ended with polite statements and emptier calendars. All revealed themselves as transactions once the novelty wore off. Do what you have to do. So will I. A silence stretched. When Victor spoke next, something human slipped around the edges. Weariness she'd never heard from him. My son's tuition is due next week. The sentence arrived so unexpected, she didn't answer. Then, carefully, I didn't know you had a son. People don't pay attention unless you make them. And there it was, an ache buried under iron. He's good. Wants to be a pianist. Prep school. Scholarships don't cover everything. Elena pictured him in his office, the framed photo she'd barely noticed before. A boy at a piano in a too big blazer, fingers curved over keys like they knew where to go. She felt the smallest pull of gravity. Empathy's quiet, annoying tug. You're better when you talk like that. I'm better when I win. He replied, and the moment snapped. Sleep well, Elena. The line clicked dead. She stared at the phone as if it might confess, then placed it face down on the table like covering a mirror after a death. Marcus leaned a hip against the counter. He wanted you scared. He got bored before he got me. Her hands trembled until the mug warmed them back to steady. Do you trust anyone on that board? Eleanor, maybe, when it suits her. She likes control more than she likes me. People who like control can be convinced by evidence. We'll get some. We. She looked up. The pronoun landed different than expected. He shrugged, a motion that somehow translated to, obviously. You don't need a bodyguard. You need a witness, preferably one who catalogs hinges. For the first time that night, Her laugh shook loose from somewhere real.
You realize I'm not an easy house guest.
You say that like it's news. She took another sip of tea. The mint soothed the ash in her throat. A small sound pattered down the hall, the soft hum of a machine, a nightlight buzzing faintly, the domestic choir of a house that had learned to sing quietly. Elena stood and walked to the doorway of the second bedroom. She didn't enter, just stood there. The room was painted the color of watercolor skies.
A bookshelf held picture books lined like soldiers pretending not to be silly.
A plastic nebulizer sat on the dresser with a sticker that read, "Brave Breaths." On the wall, a paper banner spelled Isaiah in looped letters that wobbled but did not fall. She felt something she didn't have a word for. Something like reverence and grief shaking hands. Does he know how lucky he is? She asked it, still looking at the banner. He knows I make terrible pancakes and good promises.
Marcus's voice came from behind her, close enough to matter, but far enough to give space.
Elena turned back to him. I make great coffee and terrible exits. Then we're complimentary. The heater knocked once. Rain pawed at the egress window like a polite animal. She pulled the blanket from the arm of the couch and sat, tucking it around her legs with the unapologetic efficiency of someone who'd slept in airports and boardrooms, and once, memorably, on the floor of a server closet during a product launch. Marcus dimmed the lamp. If you wake up to noise, it's just the pipes complaining. And if it isn't, then I have 2 locks and a plan. She let her head tip back against the cushion. She thought of Victor's son, a boy bending over keys, and of Isaiah's banner that wobbled without falling. She thought of 2 locks holding their lines in a world built to pry. Something unspooled in her chest. Not surrender. Permission. Good night, Marcus. Good night, Elena. In the dark, the room felt smaller, but the smallness was a blessing. Fewer places for fear to hide. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in a long time, slept, because someone else was watching the door. The knock came just after sunrise, barely 12 hours since Marcus had carried Elena from the burning tower. Sharp and deliberate. The kind that announced someone who expected to be heard. Marcus opened the door to find Detective Sarah Mitchell standing there. Windbreaker zipped to her chin, hair pulled back in a no-nonsense knot. A notebook bulged from the pocket of her bag, and the expression on her face said she was already halfway into the conversation. Marcus. She stepped inside without waiting. Her eyes caught on Elena, who had just emerged from the hallway in an oversized sweatshirt that wasn't hers. Hair still damp from the shower. The butterfly bandage on her temple, where glass had caught her during the fire, stood out against pale skin. And you must be the CEO everyone's talking about. Elena's chin lifted, the automatic defense of a woman accustomed to being discussed rather than addressed. Talking about or talking against? Detective Mitchell's mouth ticked upward. Depends who's paying for the coffee. She looked back at Marcus, all business now. We need to talk. Both of you. Marcus shut the door, sliding the deadbolt. You don't usually come this far without a reason. I have too. Mitchell dropped her bag under the table. First, the fire wasn't random. Second, your building's internal security logs are interesting.
Elena's voice went cool, executive armor snapping into place despite borrowed clothes.
Define interesting. They've been tampered with. Mitchell pulled out a stack of printed screenshots, timestamps, access logs, anomalies highlighted in yellow. The fire alarm's data feed was delayed by 3 minutes, long enough to make sure the blaze had a head start before anyone could react. Elena leaned closer, scanning the pages. Her jaw tightened with each line processed.
3 minutes is the difference between a salvageable room and a total loss.
Exactly. And whoever did it knew the system, knew how to bypass the backup. This isn't amateur work.
Marcus crossed his arms. And you came to me because...
Because you work nights. You know who's where when the rest of the city's asleep, and because you're the only person in that building who doesn't owe anyone a favor.
Elena looked at Mitchell sharply. You're saying this was internal?
I'm saying the logs point to someone with high-level access, and I'm guessing you already have a name in mind.
Elena didn't answer right away. She turned one of the pages toward the light, eyes narrowing at a particular code sequence. Victor. Mitchell didn't blink. That was my guess, too. Marcus caught the shift in Elena's posture. Tension laced with something else. Something like guilt threading through the anger. Say it. His voice came quiet but firm. Elena looked between them, the words heavy before they landed. 2 years ago, a compliance officer came to the board with evidence of financial irregularities in Victor's division. I voted to terminate him instead of investigate. Marcus frowned. Why? Because it would have been messy. Because we had a merger on the table, and I thought protecting the company meant keeping it clean in the press, even if that meant getting my hands dirty in private. She swallowed, meeting his eyes without flinching. He was right, and I buried him. Told myself it was for the greater good. Mitchell's gaze was level. And now you think this is payback? I don't think. I know. The silence that followed was tight as wire. Marcus broke it first. So you've been on both sides of the wrong decision. She met his eyes without flinching. And I'm standing here telling you because I don't plan on being on that side again. It was the kind of statement that could sound like spin in a boardroom. But here, with rain ticking against the basement window and no cameras rolling, it sounded like something closer to confession. Mitchell snapped her notebook shut. Then we need proof. The logs I have will raise eyebrows, but they won't close a case. We need the unedited backups, and those are only on the internal server. Offline, locked, backed up in the data vault on 27. Elena's eyes sharpened. That room's badge restricted. Only executives and senior IT have clearance, and maintenance personnel.
Marcus said it deadpan. They both looked at him. He shrugged.
I clean around the vault. Don't go in. But I know the guards, and I know when they're bored enough to wave me through without thinking.
Mitchell tilted her head. And you know the building's blind spots?
I catalog what could fail, including surveillance coverage. The faintest smile ghosted across Elena's mouth despite herself. But then her expression sobered. If we go after those logs, Victor will know. He'll see it as an escalation. Marcus leaned forward on the table. He already set a fire under you. Escalation's done. Mitchell slid a small recorder across the table toward Elena. If you talk to anyone on the board between now and then, record it. Doesn't matter if it's just small talk. People get careless when they think they're safe. Elena turned the device over in her hand. People get careless when they think you won't fight back. She murmured it more to herself than them, then lifted her gaze to Marcus. And you will. It wasn't a question. She held his stare for 3 beats. I will. The moment hung there, solid and unyielding. Mitchell packed her things. I'll be in touch with the time. In the meantime, watch your doors. When the door shut behind her, the apartment felt smaller, heavier. Elena walked to the window, watching rain thread down glass like nervous fingers. You're not going to tell me to stay out of it? No, I'm going to tell you to be ready for it. She glanced back. Why? Because you've got one shot to prove you're not the person you were when you buried that compliance officer. And because I don't like cleaning up after cowards. Her mouth curved, not in amusement, but in recognition of the hit. You think I'm looking for redemption? I think you're looking for the truth. Redemption's just a bonus. For the first time in days, she felt the faintest stir of something that wasn't fear. It was sharper, steadier. Outside, the rain kept falling, but the air between them had shifted. They weren't just surviving the storm anymore. They were preparing to walk into it. Morning light filtered through the basement windows of Marcus's apartment, painting pale rectangles across worn floorboards.
Elena stood before the small bathroom mirror, examining her reflection with clinical detachment. The woman who stared back wore an oversized navy t-shirt that said Seattle Fire Department across the chest in faded letters. Her usually impeccable hair hung loose and damp. A butterfly bandage marked her temple where glass had found skin. The CEO of Sterling Biomedical looked utterly, refreshingly human. "You can use these." Marcus appeared in the doorway, holding out a neatly folded stack of clothes. "My neighbor leaves things here for Isaiah sometimes. Might fit." Elena accepted them with a nod that carried more weight than the gesture warranted. "Thank you. The world thinks you're recovering at the Four Seasons. Detective Mitchell arranged it. Press camped out at the hotel entrance while you're here." "Here." Elena repeated the word, a hint of wonder threading through as she glanced around the modest bathroom, with its practical shower curtain adorned with cartoon whales. "I'll make coffee." Marcus turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. "Marcus, tell me about Isaiah." Something softened in his expression, the kind of shift that happened when a man who'd learned to carry weight alone was asked to share it. "He's 8. Smart. Too smart sometimes. Loves science, hates peas, collects rocks that look like animals, has his mother's eyes and my stubborn streak." He hesitated, the next words coming slower. "And he has severe asthma. That's why the nebulizer. 3 hospitalizations this year alone. The attacks are getting worse." The unspoken weight of medical bills hung in the air between them. Elena understood numbers, understood what chronic illness cost when insurance companies decided experimental treatments weren't worth covering. The custody hearing. "Her mother's family is fighting you for him." Marcus's jaw tightened. Her aunt. "My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. Her sister Nicole thinks Isaiah deserves better opportunities than what a maintenance man can provide." "And what do you think Isaiah deserves?" "Stability. Someone who sees him, not just what he could be. Someone who stays." The last word carried the faint echo of an old wound. Elena nodded, understanding more than she revealed. "I'll be ready in 10 minutes. The Sterling Biomedical headquarters gleamed in the morning sun. 60 stories of glass and steel rising above downtown Seattle like a monument to human ingenuity and venture capital. The lobby buzzed with activity, security guards checking IDs with heightened vigilance, executives huddled in whispered conversations, maintenance crews assessing smoke damage on the lower floors. Elena strode through the main entrance, wearing borrowed jeans and a blouse that didn't quite match, her head high despite the murmurs that followed in her wake. Marcus walked a half step behind, uncomfortable in the pressed security uniform Elena had insisted he wear. "People are staring. Let them. Perception shapes reality right now. We need to look like nothing is wrong." The elevator doors closed around them, sealing them in momentary privacy. "The board meeting's at 10. They'll want blood. They'll want a scapegoat." Marcus corrected her without apology. "Don't give them one. And if they ask why I've suddenly hired an ex-firefighter as personal security?" Marcus's lips quirked. "Tell them I have excellent references." The elevator opened onto the executive floor. Elena's assistant, a young woman with keen eyes and a perpetually concerned expression, rushed forward, tablet in hand. "Miss Sterling, thank God you're all right. We've been so worried. Your schedule is absolute chaos. Insurance adjusters need signatures. The press is demanding a statement. And Mr. Reynolds has called 3 times this morning. Amanda." Elena's voice stayed steady, command returning like muscle memory. "This is Marcus Washington. He's our new head of security. He'll need full clearance and access to all security protocols. Immediately." Amanda blinked, taking in Marcus's posture and watchful eyes. "I wasn't aware we were hiring for that position." "Recent events have made it necessary," Elena replied without breaking stride. "He'll need everything. Now." Amanda's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly, calculation happening behind professional courtesy. "Of course. I'll notify IT immediately."
She glanced at her tablet, fingers moving across the screen. The board is gathering early. There are concerns about the company's direction. I'm sure there are. Elena said it like she'd expected nothing less. Have the fire investigation reports sent to my office, and Amanda, no calls. Not even from Victor. Especially not from Victor,
Marcus added quietly. Amanda's gaze flicked between them, calculating something behind her professional smile. Understood. Marcus stood against the wall of the boardroom, arms crossed, watching the sterling biomedical leadership team filter in. They wore expensive suits and expressions of carefully modulated concern. Their eyes slid over him with dismissive curiosity before returning to Elena, who sat at the head of the long table reviewing documents as if this were any ordinary meeting. James Harrington, the CFO, entered last. Silver-haired, patrician features settled in a perpetual frown. His voice carried the practiced warmth of a man who had mastered the art of sounding sincere while meaning nothing. Elena, we're relieved to see you well. Last night was unfortunate. That's one word for it, Elena replied without looking up from her papers. And this is... Harrington gestured toward Marcus with the kind of vague dismissal reserved for help. Marcus Washington, our new head of security. Harrington's eyebrows rose. Rather sudden, isn't it? I don't recall the board approving this position. The board doesn't approve security personnel. I do. Elena finally met his gaze, and Marcus watched her lock into place. The CEO who'd built an empire on the bones of people who'd underestimated her. Yes. Well. Harrington took his seat, displeasure radiating from every expensive fiber. Speaking of approvals, there are matters requiring immediate attention. Our shareholders are understandably concerned after last night's incident. The stock has already dropped 3 points in pre-market trading. Victor Lang strode in, immaculate in a charcoal suit despite the early hour. Everything about him polished to a degree that suggested either obsessive preparation or deep insecurity masked by control. 4 points now, he corrected, setting a leather portfolio on the table with deliberate precision. Elena's expression remained neutral, but Marcus noticed her fingers tighten almost imperceptibly around her pen. Victor, I'm surprised you're not still answering questions from the fire marshal. A razor-thin smile crossed Victor's face. I've always been efficient at handling emergencies, unlike our current security protocols, apparently. His gaze shifted to Marcus, assessing in a way that said he'd already decided Marcus didn't matter. Though it seems you've taken steps to address that deficiency. Eleanor Shaw, the board chairwoman, rapped her knuckles on the table. 70 years old, with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen 3 market crashes and 2 hostile takeovers without flinching. Let's focus, shall we? We have a company in crisis, a building with significant damage, and investors demanding answers. Elena, what's our response? Elena stood, commanding the room with quiet authority that needed no volume. The response is simple. We continue with Project Phoenix. The fire damaged peripheral offices, but our secure servers remain intact. The prototype testing is still on schedule. Project Phoenix is precisely what we need to discuss. Victor interjected, opening his portfolio with theatrical precision. Development costs have exceeded projections by 30%. The clinical trial data is promising but not definitive. And now we have a possible security breach. Perhaps it's time to consider alternative approaches. You mean your approach? Elena said it flatly. The merger with MedTech Global. It would solve our immediate financial concerns, Harrington added, right on cue, like they'd rehearsed this dance, and provide additional security resources. Marcus watched the dynamic unfold, recognizing the choreographed nature of the exchange. Victor and Harrington had prepared this assault, with Eleanor playing the role of objective mediator, a corporate 3-card Monty where the CEO was the mark. MedTech wants our research. They don't want a partnership. They want acquisition. If we merge, Project Phoenix becomes their property, and they'll shelve it in favor of their own treatments, which are less effective but more profitable. That's speculation. Victor's voice stayed smooth as expensive whiskey. That's pattern recognition. Elena countered without heat.
They've done it with 3 previous acquisitions, buying innovation to bury it. Eleanor sighed, the sound weighted with decades of navigating egos and agendas. The fact remains, Elena, that after last night's incident, confidence in your leadership has been questioned. Perhaps a strategic pause would be prudent. A pause would kill us. Project Phoenix isn't just another product, it's a breakthrough in respiratory disease treatment. Thousands of patients are waiting for this technology, including children with severe asthma who have no other options. Marcus straightened at this, his mind immediately going to Isaiah, to the inhaler that didn't work well enough, to the surgery they couldn't afford, to the nights spent listening to his son's struggle for breath that should come easy. Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. Your passion is admirable, Elena, but business decisions require pragmatism, not sentiment. This isn't sentiment, it's vision, and it's why this company exists. Eleanor glanced at her watch. We'll revisit this discussion after a full assessment of the fire damage. In the meantime, Elena, I suggest you prepare a statement for our investors. Confidence is fragile, especially when buildings are not. As the board members filed out, Victor lingered, waiting until only Elena, Marcus, and Amanda remained. His eyes moved over Marcus with the kind of assessment usually reserved for livestock at auction. Your new security detail is quite attentive, though I wonder if hiring the man who happened to rescue you creates a certain conflict of interest. The only conflict of interest I'm concerned with is yours, Victor. Still pushing the MedTech merger after they declined your proposal for a board position? Something dangerous flashed in Victor's eyes. Quick as lightning, but Marcus caught it. The mask slipping for half a second before professional courtesy reassembled. Be careful, Elena. Glass towers are fragile things. So are reputations. He nodded to Amanda as he left. Ms. Price, always a pleasure. When the door closed, Elena turned to Marcus. Tour the Security Operations Center. I want your assessment by end of day. Marcus nodded, understanding the dismissal for what it was. A chance to explore the building's vulnerabilities without raising suspicion. As he left, he heard Amanda ask, Do you really trust him? Elena's answer followed him into the hallway. I trust that he has nothing to gain by betraying me. That's rarer than you'd think. The Sterling Biomedical Security Center occupied half of the 42nd floor, a warren of monitoring stations, server racks, and glass-walled offices. The technology was cutting edge, but Marcus immediately spotted the human weaknesses. Officers more focused on phones than screens. Badge readers with tape over sensors for convenience. Doors propped open with waste bins because protocols interfered with coffee runs. You must be the new boss, a voice called from behind a bank of monitors. A heavy-set man in his 50s emerged, extending a hand. Dave Simmons, Security Operations Manager. Marcus shook the offered hand, noting the firm grip and assessing eyes. Marcus Washington, firefighter, right? I can spot the walk. Used to volunteer with Seattle FD myself, back when my knees worked. 12 years before I switched to maintenance. Dave nodded, respect flickering across weathered features. Figured it was something with discipline. You've got that look, like you're mapping exits without even thinking about it. He gestured around the room with obvious pride, tempered by frustration. So what do you think of our setup? Marcus chose his words carefully. Diplomacy learned from years of dealing with territorial egos in both fire stations and maintenance departments. Impressive technology. The implementation has room for improvement. Dave barked a laugh. Corporate speak for this place is a mess. I've been saying it for years. Got the top-of-the-line toys but can't get approval for proper staffing or training. He lowered his voice, glancing around to confirm they weren't overheard. Between us, there's a reason that fire got so out of control. System's been glitchy for months. My reports keep getting lost somewhere between here and the executive floor. Marcus's interest sharpened. Lost by whom? Above my pay grade to speculate. But I'll tell you this. The only person who ever followed up on my concerns was Miss Sterling. The rest of them... He made a dismissive gesture that said everything about institutional apathy. I'd like to see those reports.
Dave scratched his chin, weighing risks against instinct. Officially, they don't exist anymore. Unofficially, he tapped a drawer in his desk. I keep backups, old habit. Always have hard copies when the digital trail gets murky. Smart man. Paranoid man, Dave corrected with a grim smile. But in this business, paranoia keeps the lights on. He pulled a flash drive from his pocket, the casual motion suggesting he'd been waiting for someone to ask. 3 months of security logs, badge access records, my personal notes. I was planning to take this to Miss Sterling after the dust settled. Marcus accepted the drive, tucking it into his pocket with the weight of evidence that could burn careers. Why are you giving this to me? Dave's expression grew serious. Because you pulled her out of that fire when everyone else was running the other way. That tells me something about your character. He hesitated, then added, and because my daughter has asthma too. Severe. I've heard rumors about Project Phoenix. If it's what they say it is, a lot of families need that to succeed. Marcus stared at him, startled by the personal revelation. Dave shrugged. Small building, big ears. Your son visited last month for Take Your Kid to Work Day. Sweet kid. Draws like a dream. Before Marcus could respond, an alarm chimed on one of the monitors. Dave turned, scanning the screen with professional efficiency. Flagged access in R&D, biomedical section. Marcus followed, instincts firing. At the monitor, Dave's fingers flew across the keyboard. Pulling archived footage, this is from last night, about an hour before the fire.
The screen flickered, showing a laboratory where a figure in a lab coat accessed a secure terminal. The timestamp read 8:47 p.m., Thursday evening. The person moved with urgency, furtive, checking over shoulders as files downloaded to a portable device.
That's Dr. Rachel Hayes.
Dave's voice carried confusion.
She's authorized for that area, but look at the badge entry. Loading dock at 8:42 p.m. She always uses the executive entrance. Always. Marcus studied the woman's movements. Every gesture screamed wrong. What happened after she left? Dave's fingers moved across keyboards, pulling up more logs. She badged out at 8:53 p.m. 6 minutes later, first smoke detector triggered on floor 12. By the time sprinklers activated, fire was already spreading. Keep tracking her current location. And get me everything you have on Dr. Rachel Hayes. Employment history, access logs, behavioral patterns, everything. Dave's expression shifted to concern. You think she set the fire? I think someone did. And she was in the building downloading sensitive files right before it started. Marcus pulled out his phone, texting Elena a message that carried urgency in its brevity. Have archived footage of Dr. Hayes in R&D last night, hour before fire. Downloaded Phoenix files. Need to talk. The response came back in seconds. My office, now. Marcus turned back to Dave. Keep this quiet. If anyone asks, routine security audit. Dave met his eyes with understanding that needed no elaboration. What security audit? Exactly. As Marcus headed for the elevator, his phone buzzed again. Different number this time. Unfamiliar. He answered cautiously. Mr. Washington? The voice was female, professional, carrying the practiced neutrality of someone delivering information they'd rather not. This is Dana Thompson with Child Protective Services. We'll be conducting your home evaluation tonight at 6 p.m. Marcus frowned, warning bells clamoring in his head. That's fast. Usually there's more notice. Court orders sometimes expedite things. See you at 6. The line went dead before he could respond. Marcus stared at his phone, unease crawling up his spine like frost. Standard procedure was 5 to 7 days advance notice. Someone had expedited this. Someone with connections and motivation to put pressure exactly where it would hurt most. He stepped into the elevator, already composing a text to Mrs. Banks about watching Isaiah this evening. Already calculating how to be in 2 places at once when both demanded his presence. Already feeling the squeeze of a trap closing with methodical precision. The doors slid shut,
and his reflection stared back at him from polished steel.
A man in a borrowed security uniform trying to hold together pieces that kept fracturing faster than he could repair them. His phone buzzed one more time. Elena's message appeared. Victor knows something. He's moving faster than expected. We need those vault logs tonight, or we lose everything. Marcus closed his eyes, the weight of competing urgencies pressing down like water pressure at depth. Isaiah's custody evaluation, the vault heist, Dr. Hayes' involvement, Victor's acceleration, all of it converging on tonight like storm systems meeting over open ocean. He opened his eyes and texted back. Tonight then, after the evaluation, I'll make it work. The elevator climbed toward the executive floor, and Marcus did what he'd learned to do in burning buildings when every decision carried life or death weight. He prioritized, triaged, accepted that perfect was impossible and good enough would have to suffice. Isaiah came first. Always. That was promise number one, and it overrode everything else. But Elena's fight was becoming his fight, not because of obligation or attraction, though both factors complicated the equation, but because Dr. Hayes' footage meant Phoenix was under threat from the inside, and Phoenix meant hope for kids like Isaiah, meant maybe someday his son could run without fear, could breathe without counting the pulls left in an inhaler that cost more than groceries. The elevator doors opened. Elena was waiting, and the clock was already counting down towards 6 p.m., when everything would either hold together or shatter completely. Elena's office occupied the northeast corner of the 58th floor, a space she'd reclaimed Friday afternoon after the board's attempt to force her out. Floor-to-ceiling windows, framing Seattle's skyline like a postcard designed to intimidate. Marcus had never been this high in the building, never had reason to ascend past the mechanical rooms and service corridors that defined his professional geography. The space smelled of expensive leather and the faint chemical tang of new electronics. A glass desk held 3 monitors and nothing else. No photos, no personal effects. The office of someone who lived at work because everywhere else felt less safe. Dr. Hayes was in the building last night, an hour before the fire, downloading Phoenix files. Marcus closed the door behind him, keeping his voice low despite the soundproofing. She's been with me 5 years. Since the beginning. Elena's response came hollow, the kind of emptiness that followed betrayal by someone trusted. People change under pressure, or they were never what we thought. He crossed to her desk, pulling out Dave's flash drive and setting it down like evidence at trial. 3 months of security anomalies, badge access during off hours, system glitches that weren't glitches. Your head of security's been documenting everything and getting ignored. Elena picked up the drive, turning it over in her fingers. Victor? Maybe. Maybe Dr. Hayes working alone. Maybe both. Marcus leaned against the desk. But someone's been planning this for months. Someone who knew exactly which systems to compromise and when. Elena's phone lit up with an incoming call. She glanced at the screen, then silenced it without answering. That was Victor. 3rd time this hour. Probably wondering if you've started packing yet. Something hardened in her expression. The shift from wounded executive to combat-ready CEO happened in the space between breaths. I need to see those files. All of them. And I need access to the vault tonight before he can scrub what's left. About tonight, Marcus started, but Elena cut him off. I know. Your custody evaluation, 6 p.m. She met his eyes with understanding that surprised him. Family first. Always. We move after. The words landed different than expected. Not dismissive, not resentful. Just stated as fact by someone who'd apparently been paying attention to what mattered. I'll be back by 8. Maybe earlier if it goes fast. It won't. These things never do. Elena stood, moving to the window. 58 floors below, Seattle went about its Friday business, oblivious to the corporate warfare happening in glass towers above. My father used to say, the measure of a man isn't what he takes from the world,
It's what he gives back. Marcus waited, sensing the confession forming. He invented a ventilation system for woodworking shops, sawdust filtration, revolutionary for respiratory safety. A tool company strung him along for months, examined his designs, promised investment. She touched the glass with one finger, tracing patterns only she could see. Then they backed out, released their own version a year later. He couldn't afford the legal battle. The stress triggered his heart condition. He died believing his life's work had been stolen. Marcus processed this, understanding clicking into place. And Phoenix is built on his foundational research, microfiltration concepts he developed 30 years ago. Victor knows this. My brother David knows this. They think I'm profiting off Dad's work without acknowledging him. Your brother? The surprise leaked through despite Marcus's attempt at neutrality. I haven't spoken to David in 20 years. He wanted to sell Dad's workshop after the funeral. I refused. Built Sterling Biomedical on the foundation of Dad's research. David went to law school, became an IP attorney for MedCorp. The pieces assembled themselves into a picture Marcus didn't like. So this isn't just about Phoenix. It's about family, legacy, revenge. Elena turned from the window, her eyes carrying the weight of decades-old wounds. Victor's the weapon. But I think David's pulling the trigger. Before Marcus could respond, Elena's desk phone rang. The internal line. She answered, listened, her face draining of color with each passing second. When? Her voice emerged tight as wire. Send security immediately. Lock down the floor. Nobody in or out. She hung up, already moving toward the door. Dr. Hayes, dead in her home office. Apparent suicide. The crime scene tape across Dr. Rachel Hayes's townhouse door fluttered in the afternoon breeze like a warning flag. Detective Mitchell stood on the porch, notebook out, her expression carrying the professional neutrality of someone who'd seen too many bodies to react with shock anymore. Marcus and Elena approached from the unmarked sedan Mitchell had sent to collect them. When? Elena's question came before Mitchell could offer greeting. Medical examiner estimates between 10 and 11 this morning. Neighbor called it in after hearing what she thought was a car backfiring. Single gunshot? Marcus asked it with the clinical detachment of someone who'd processed trauma scenes before. Mitchell nodded. To the head. Gun on the floor beside her. Computer still running when officers arrived. She gestured toward the door. You two shouldn't be here. This is an active investigation. And yet you called us. Elena's observation carried no accusation, just statement of fact. Because what's on that computer changes everything. Mitchell led them inside, careful to keep them clear of the evidence markers dotting the hardwood floors. The house spoke of comfortable wealth, tasteful furniture, art that suggested actual appreciation rather than investment. A life interrupted mid-sentence. The office sat at the end of the hall. Blood spatter patterns decorated the wall behind an expensive ergonomic chair. The body was gone, but its absence somehow made the scene worse. The negative space where a person used to be. Computer forensics pulled the browser history. Mitchell handed Elena a printed screenshot. She was researching Phoenix protocols, not the sanitized versions for board presentations, the actual formulas. And she was emailing them to an encrypted address. How long? 6 months. Mitchell's answer landed like a sentencing. But here's what doesn't track. This, she indicated the scene with a sweep of her hand, is staged. Gun angles wrong for self-infliction. No hesitation marks, no note. And the computer's open to the exact emails she'd been sending, like someone wanted us to find them. Victor. Elena breathed the name. Or your brother, Mitchell countered. The encrypted email address traces back to a server farm registered to a shell company. That shell company has connections to MedCorp's legal department. And guess who handles their IP portfolio? David Sterling. Marcus finished the thought, watching Elena process the betrayal, layering upon betrayal. So Dr. Hayes was feeding Phoenix research to David, who was giving it to MedCorp. And when she became a liability, someone made it look like she couldn't live with the guilt. Mitchell closed her notebook. Problem is proving it. The gun's registered to a Cole Sanders, professional contractor. No fixed address, no fingerprints at the scene except Hayes's. Whoever hired him knew what they were doing. Elena walked to the desk, careful not to touch anything. Her eyes scanned the papers scattered across the surface, research notes, medical journals, a framed photo of Dr. Hayes with a man Marcus assumed was her late husband. She was a good person. Her husband died from the disease Phoenix is supposed to cure. She dedicated her life to this research. Good people do bad things under the right pressure. Marcus kept his voice gentle. What was her pressure? Medical bills. Mitchell pulled up another document on her tablet. Cancer treatment. Experimental protocol. Insurance denied coverage. $240,000 in debt. Someone offered to pay it off in exchange for Phoenix data. David. Elena's voice carried certainty now. He knew about her husband, knew she was vulnerable, made it seem like he was helping her continue her husband's legacy while actually stealing mine. Mitchell's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her expression shifting.
We've got a problem. Vincent Cross was just found dead in the Sterling Biomedical boardroom. Single gunshot. And Marcus, she looked at him with something like apology. The gun's registered to you. The floor seemed to tilt. Marcus heard the words, but they didn't process. Couldn't process because they made no sense in any reality he inhabited. I don't own a gun. Sold everything after Keisha died. Couldn't have them in the house with Isaiah. I believe you, but someone went through a lot of trouble to make sure evidence says otherwise. Elena's hand found his arm. Steadying, or being steadied, Marcus couldn't tell. This is the frame. Hayes to make me look unstable. Vincent to make Marcus look violent. Force us both out while destroying Phoenix's credibility. And it's working. Mitchell's phone buzzed again. She read the message, jaw tightening. Board's calling an emergency meeting. They're voting on your removal as CEO in 2 hours.
And Marcus. She met his eyes with the kind of look that preceded bad news. There's a warrant being prepared for your arrest. I can give you maybe 6 hours before I have to bring you in. The custody evaluation. Marcus's voice came hollow. It's at 6. If I'm arrested before then, you lose Isaiah, Elena finished, understanding crystallizing into decision. Then we move now. We get those vault logs, prove the tampering, expose David and Victor before the board votes. That's a lot to accomplish in... Mitchell checked her watch. 3 hours. Marcus's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Don't be late. 6 p.m. sharp. Someone's tightening the noose. He showed them the message. They know about the vault plan. They're trying to make sure I can't be there. Then we split up. Elena's tone carried command authority. Marcus goes to the evaluation, proves he's a stable father. I go to the vault with Detective Mitchell. We get the evidence we need.
Marcus started to protest, but Elena's look stopped him.
Your son comes first. That's not negotiable. I can handle this. You sure about that? Mitchell's question carried professional skepticism. Because if they're willing to commit 2 murders, a third won't slow them down. Elena's smile carried no humor. Then I suggest we don't give them the opportunity. The Belmont apartments looked smaller in daylight, less a refuge and more what it was, a building where people lived paycheck to paycheck and hoped the rent stayed stable. Marcus pulled into his usual spot at 5:47 p.m., 13 minutes before the 6 p.m. evaluation. 13 minutes to transform from suspected murderer helping a CEO fight corporate conspiracy into devoted single father deserving custody of his son. Mrs. Banks waited on the steps, Isaiah beside her. The boy wore his good clothes, the button-up shirt from last year's school photos that was getting tight across the shoulders, khakis that had been carefully pressed, shoes that still looked new because he only wore them for church and special occasions. His eyes found his father, and relief flooded features too young to carry the worry etched there. Daddy,
Not a question, just acknowledgement. Marcus knelt, pulling his son into a hug that lasted 3 seconds longer than usual, long enough to memorize the weight. The smell of the detangler Mrs. Banks used on his hair, the way Isaiah's fingers gripped his shoulders like anchors. "Hey, Bean, you look sharp. Mrs. Banks said you had an important meeting. That's why you're late." The explanation came matter-of-fact. Isaiah had learned early that sometimes adults had good reasons for broken promises. The acceptance of it broke something in Marcus's chest. "Very important. But I'm here now." He stood, nodding thanks to Mrs. Banks, whose expression said she understood more than anyone had told her. The CPS worker's car pulled up, a sedan with government plates. Professional, efficient. The woman who emerged carried a tablet and the kind of neutral expression that came from years of seeing families at their worst while maintaining objectivity. "Mr. Washington, I'm Dana Thompson." She extended a hand. Marcus shook it, noting the firm grip and assessing eyes that cataloged everything from his pressed shirt to Isaiah's posture to the building's peeling paint. "This is my son, Isaiah." "Hello, Isaiah." Dana crouched to eye level with practiced ease. "I'm going to ask you and your dad some questions. Nothing scary, just getting to know you both. Sound okay?" Isaiah glanced at Marcus, who nodded. The boy straightened his shoulders. "Yes, ma'am." Inside opened the refrigerator, stocked with actual food, not just takeout containers. Checked the bathroom, clean, child-safe medications stored high. Entered Isaiah's bedroom, small but his own, bed made, books organized on the shelf, nebulizer on the nightstand with fresh tubing. "You keep an impressive home, Mr. Washington." "Thank you. We do our best." Isaiah sat on the couch, swinging his legs with barely contained energy. Dana settled into the armchair across from him. "Isaiah, do you like living here with your dad?" "Yes," no hesitation. "What do you like about it?" The boy considered this with the seriousness of someone who understood stakes without fully grasping implications. "Dad makes pancakes on Saturdays, even though they're lumpy. And he reads to me every night, even when he's tired from work. And he never forgets my medicine, every single time." Dana made notes. "What about your Aunt Nicole? You like spending time with her?" "She's nice. He has a nebulizer at home and one at school. Emergency inhaler always on his person. I have the pulmonologist's number programmed in my phone. We've never missed an appointment." He pulled out his phone, showing her the calendar packed with medical reminders, prescription refills, specialist visits. The hospitalizations this year? Those happened when insurance denied coverage for the recommended treatment. "The attacks are getting worse. We're managing with current protocols, but he needs surgery. $150,000. Insurance won't cover it." Marcus kept his voice steady despite the rage that simmered beneath every conversation about insurance companies deciding his son's breathing wasn't worth their money. Dana made more notes. The silence stretched. "Mr. Washington, I'm going to be direct. Your sister-in-law has raised concerns about your financial stability, about your ability to provide the level of care Isaiah's condition requires. My sister-in-law has a nicer house and more money. I don't dispute that." Marcus met Dana's eyes without flinching. "But Isaiah doesn't need the biggest bedroom or the fanciest toys. He needs someone who sees him, who knows he draws dragons when he's anxious, and that he counts breaths when he's scared, but trying to hide it. He needs someone who shows up, who stays." The last word carried weight from promises made and kept through years, when showing up meant watching your wife die slowly, and staying meant rebuilding a life from ash. Dana closed her tablet. "I'll be filing my report with the court. The judge will make the final determination at Thursday's hearing." She stood, then paused at the door. "For what it's worth, Mr. Washington, this is a good home. Isaiah is clearly loved and well cared for. That matters more than most people realize." After she left, Isaiah climbed into Marcus's lap despite being almost too big for it.
"Did I do good?"
"You did great, Bean." Marcus held his son, breathing in the moment while it lasted. "Are you in trouble, Daddy?"
Like real trouble? The question came quiet, perceptive. Some people think I did something I didn't do, but we're going to prove they're wrong. Isaiah nodded against his chest. Dragons always win in the end. Not always, but the good ones fight until they do. Marcus's phone buzzed. Elena's message. Vault in 30 minutes. Mitchell's in position. We need you if you can make it. Marcus looked down at his son, already half asleep against his shoulder. Made a decision that required no debate. Mrs. Banks, I need one more favor. The data vault on the 27th floor existed in a state of permanent twilight. Emergency lighting painted everything in shades of amber and shadow. Server racks hummed with the steady breath of machines, processing information worth more than most people earned in lifetimes. Elena stood before the biometric scanner, her palm pressed against glass that read the whorls and valleys of her skin before granting access with a pneumatic hiss. Detective Mitchell swept the corridor behind them with professional paranoia. Security's doing shift change. We've got 18 minutes before the next patrol. Elena pulled out the specialized drive Mitchell had provided earlier. Corporate espionage equipment, masquerading as routine IT maintenance tools. The unaltered logs are in a hidden partition. This will find and extract them without triggering alerts, assuming they haven't already been deleted. Elena's fingers flew across the keyboard, navigating through layers of security with the practiced ease of someone who'd built this system before hiring people to maintain it. Code scrolled past. Access denied messages flashed, then cleared as she entered bypass credentials. I'm in. Downloading now. Progress bar appeared. Estimated time, 4 minutes. Mitchell checked her watch. Make it fast. Building security's been notified about Vincent's death. They're going to lock this place down within the hour. Elena stared at the screen, willing electrons to move faster through fiber optic cables. 30%. 45%. Footsteps echoed from the corridor. Not the steady pace of security patrol. Faster. Purposeful. We've got company. Mitchell's hand went to her service weapon, not drawing, but ready. The door opened. Marcus stepped through, slightly out of breath from sprinting up 3 flights of stairs to avoid elevator cameras. Isaiah? Elena's question came before relief or recrimination. With Mrs. Banks. Evaluation's done. Dana seemed fair. Actual fair, not political fair. He crossed to the terminal. What do we have? 70% downloaded. Logs show systematic tampering over 6 months. Someone with executive access has been altering timestamps, deleting footage, creating blind spots in the security coverage. Who? The download completed. Elena opened the first file, raw data streaming across the screen in columns of timestamps and badge numbers. Her eyes scanned, speed reading years of practice making patterns visible. Victor's credentials. But the access pattern's wrong. She pulled up a comparison chart. Victor badges in through the executive entrance, always has. These entries show the loading dock. Different timing, different movement patterns. Someone cloned his badge. Marcus leaned closer, his maintenance knowledge of building systems filling gaps. You'd need physical access to the security office, and administrator privileges to create a duplicate without alerts. The pieces assembled themselves into a picture none of them wanted to see. David. Elena breathed the name. My brother has both. He consulted on our security protocols 3 years ago when we expanded. Had full system access for 6 weeks. Mitchell pulled out her phone, already dialing. I'm getting a warrant for David Sterling. We've got motive, means, and now... The lights cut out. Not just the room, but the entire building. Emergency backup kicked in after 3 seconds that felt like 3 years. Red emergency lighting bathed everything in the color of warning. Lockdown protocol. Marcus recognized it immediately. Someone triggered a building-wide security alert. Elena's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared. You should have taken the deal. Now everyone loses. The terminal screen went black. then rebooted with text that made Elena's blood run cold. Phoenix protocols. Critical corruption detected. Safety parameters exceeded. All patient data compromise. No. The where it needs even save the word especially became. Safety parameters compressed by the community. It was changed the way to be CAFE. No. The messenger was never hidden today. The Phoenix protocols, corruption detected. The purpose of message manage was presented and the Phoenix, rebooted with Elter. The word escaped her like a punch to the gut.
He's not just stealing it, he's destroying it. Marcus looked at the timestamp. This happened 18 minutes ago, while we were in here. They ran, through corridors painted red by emergency lights, past server rooms where cooling fans spun down in controlled shutdown, toward the R&D labs where Phoenix lived in test tubes and computer models, and the dreams of families who needed hope to breathe. The lab doors stood open, unusual because protocols demanded they stay sealed during lockdown. Marcus pushed through first, his body automatically taking point. Dr. Hayes' replacement, a young researcher Marcus didn't recognize, stood at the central terminal, hands shaking, eyes wide. Someone uploaded corrupted code. The nanobot parameters are altered. If this version reaches production, people die. Elena finished, her voice carrying the hollow certainty of someone watching years of work evaporate. Can we restore from backup? The researcher shook her head. Backups were wiped. 30 minutes ago, remote access. I've been trying to stop the cascade, but... Show me. Elena displaced her at the keyboard, fingers moving with desperate speed. Code that should have been elegant showed fracture lines. Variables altered, safety margins eliminated. The molecular robots designed to heal would instead trigger catastrophic respiratory failure. Marcus watched over her shoulder, understanding nothing of the science, but everything about the stakes. How long to fix it? Days, maybe weeks. We'd need Dr. Hayes' original notes and... She stopped, realization hitting. Dr. Hayes is dead. Elena's phone rang, Victor's number. She answered on speaker. I assume you've discovered the problem. His voice carried satisfaction like expensive cologne. You're killing Phoenix. I'm preventing a disaster. Corrupted research released to the public. Patients dead. Sterling Biomedical destroyed by your reckless ambition. Unless... He paused for effect. You resign immediately. Announce personal health issues. Recommend me as interim CEO. Phoenix gets shelved pending review. Everyone walks away. And if I refuse? This version uploads to the FDA in... The sound of a keyboard click carried through the phone. 4 hours. Your company becomes synonymous with medical manslaughter, criminal charges, civil suits, bankruptcy. You planned this. All of it. Hayes, Vincent, the fire? Not alone. Victor's admission came easy. Your brother David provided the motivation, the reminder that you built an empire on your father's stolen research while excluding family. MedCorp provided the resources. I provided the execution. And Marcus? Framing him for Vincent's murder? Collateral damage. Though I'll admit, having the hero maintenance man go down for murder has poetic appeal. Mitchell was already on her phone, recording everything. Marcus watched Elena's face cycle through emotions. Rage, grief, calculation, before settling on something colder than all of them combined. I need proof you can actually stop the upload. Victor laughed. Check your terminal. I just delayed it by 10 minutes. 4 hours and 10 minutes now. Tick-tock, Elena. The line went dead. Elena stared at the screen where a countdown timer had appeared. 4:10:00, 4:09:59, 4:09:58. Marcus's phone buzzed. Mrs. Banks, Isaiah asking for you. Says he had bad dream about Mama. Come when you can.
The message arrived like a knife between ribs. His son needed him. The woman trying to save thousands of kids like his son needed him. The police needed him to not be arrested for murder, and the clock was counting down toward disaster. Elena saw him reading the text. "Go, I can help. Your son needs you more than I do right now." Her voice carried absolute certainty. "Mitchell and I can handle this. Go be a father." Marcus hesitated, every instinct screaming that leaving was wrong, that walking away from a fight was betrayal. Elena touched his arm. "You taught me that promises matter. Keep yours." He went, ran through corridors and downstairs and out into Seattle evening where rain had started again, ran toward the small basement apartment where an 8-year-old boy was crying for his mother and only his father could help. Behind him, the building counted down toward catastrophe, and Elena stood in the lab, staring at corrupted code, knowing she had 4 hours to save everything or watch it burn. The countdown timer ticked mercilessly. 4:08:47. 4:08:46. 4:08:45. Elena's fingers moved across the keyboard with desperate precision, opening file after file of corrupted Phoenix protocols. Each one showed the same systematic destruction. Safety parameters deleted, dosage calculations altered. The nanobots that should heal lung tissue would instead trigger cascading organ failure. Detective Mitchell stood at the lab door, phone pressed to her ear, her voice clipped and urgent. "I need a team at David Sterling's office, now, full warrant, and put a bolo out on Victor Lang. Consider him dangerous." She ended the call, crossed to Elena. "What do we have?" "A disaster." Elena pulled up a simulation on the secondary monitor. Red warnings flashed across projected outcomes. "If this version reaches the FDA, they'll fast-track emergency authorization based on our earlier trials. First patients get treated within weeks. Within months, they start dying." Mitchell processed this. "How many? Conservative estimate? 200 patients in the initial rollout, all critical cases, children mostly. Kids like Isaiah who have no other options." The weight of it settled between them. Not just corporate sabotage, mass murder dressed as innovation. "Can you rebuild from scratch?" Elena shook her head, exhaustion and despair warring across her features. 5 years of research. Dr. Hayes' notes were the foundation, everything else built on her work. Without the original data, she stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes widened. The clinic. What clinic? Marcus mentioned it. Community clinic where Dr. Hayes volunteered, where she met the families Phoenix was supposed to help. Elena was already moving, grabbing her phone. If she kept backup notes anywhere off-site, it would be there. Somewhere she could see the faces of the people she was trying to save. She dialed, waited through 3 rings before a tired voice answered. "Pioneer Heights Community Center, this is Elena Sterling. I need to speak with Dr. Sarah Palmer. It's an emergency." A pause, then, "Dr. Palmer's in the middle of evening clinic. Can I take a message?" "Tell her it's about Dr. Rachel Hayes. Tell her Phoenix is dying, and 200 children will die with it, unless I find Hayes' backup notes in the next..." She checked the countdown. 4 hours. Another pause. Then the sound of movement, muffled conversation. A new voice came on, older, steady. "Ms. Sterling, this is Sarah Palmer. What's happened?" Elena explained in terse sentences, the corruption, the countdown, the deaths that would follow if the compromised version reached production. "Rachel kept a locker here for her volunteer work. I have the combination for emergencies. Can you check it? Now?" Already moving. The sound of footsteps, a door opening, metal scraping metal. Then silence that stretched so long, Elena thought the connection had dropped. "Dr. Palmer?" There's a notebook, leather cover, dragons embossed on the front. Elena's breath caught. That's it.
That's her research journal. She showed it to me once. Said her husband gave it to her before he died. I'm looking at it now.
Page and pages of formulas, molecular diagrams, safety protocols. Can you photograph every page and send them to me? Right now? Dr. Palmer's voice carried the weight of understanding. Give me 20 minutes. You have 18. The countdown timer hit 3:50 when the first images started arriving. Elena's phone buzzed repeatedly as Dr. Palmer's photographs loaded. 47 pages of Dr. Hayes's careful handwriting. The original Phoenix protocols before they'd been digitized, before they'd been corrupted, before David Sterling had stolen them. Elena transferred the images to the main terminal, pulling up the comparison software. Mitchell, her voice carried urgency. I need you to delay that upload. Hack it, break it, I don't care. Buy me 2 more hours. I'm a detective, not a cybercrimes unit. You know people who are. Call them. Tell them this is a matter of national security if you have to. Just buy me time.
Mitchell was already dialing, her other hand pulling up contacts.
Elena turned to the young researcher who'd been watching with wide eyes. What's your name? Dr. Lisa Chen. Okay, Dr. Chen. You're about to get a crash course in saving the world. I need you to input these formulas exactly as written. No shortcuts, no autocorrect. Every character matters. Chen nodded, pulling up a second terminal. The work began. Elena called out numbers and variables from Hayes's handwritten notes, while Chen typed with frantic precision. Page by page, they rebuilt what David had destroyed. The countdown timer became background noise. 3:20. 3. 2:45. Mitchell paced the corridor outside, phone pressed to her ear, arguing with someone about jurisdiction and emergency protocols and the definition of domestic terrorism when corporate sabotage threatened mass casualties. At 2:30, Elena's phone rang. Marcus. How's Isaiah? Asleep, finally. Bad dreams about Keisha. But he's okay now. Marcus's voice carried exhaustion that matched her own. How's Phoenix? We're rebuilding. Dr. Hayes left backup notes at the clinic. But Marcus... She hesitated, knowing what she was about to ask. I need something from you. Anything. Your son's medical records. Specifically, his lung function tests from the last 6 months. Elena heard the confusion in his silence. Why? Because the FDA will want proof that the corrected protocols work, and because Isaiah's decline matches the patient profile perfectly. If we can show that the original formulas would have helped him while the corrupted version would have killed him, you want to use my son as the test case, not as a test subject, as evidence. Proof that this matters, that real children's lives hang in the balance. Another silence. Then, I'll send them now. The medical records arrived 3 minutes later. Elena pulled them up alongside the Phoenix protocols, running simulations that showed stark divergence. The corrupted version would have triggered acute respiratory failure in a patient with Isaiah's biomarkers within 72 hours of treatment. The corrected version showed projected improvement in lung function by 40% within 6 weeks. She saved the comparison, added it to the evidence file Mitchell was building. The countdown hit 2 minutes. Elena's fingers cramped. Her eyes burned from staring at screens. But the work continued, variable by variable, formula by formula. The elegant architecture of Dr. Hayes's research emerging from handwritten pages like a blueprint for hope. At 1:30, Mitchell returned. Cybercrimes is in. They've identified the upload mechanism. It's on a delayed trigger from an offshore server. They can't stop it, but they can slow it. You've got an extra 90 minutes. Elena didn't look up from her work. Then we have 3 hours total to finish this and get it to the FDA before the corrupted version goes live. Mitchell's expression shifted. About that. We found David Sterling. Where? SeaTac Airport, trying to board a flight to Sao Paulo. No extradition treaty.
She held up her phone, showing a photo of a man in handcuffs being led through the terminal by federal agents. 45 years old. Elena's eyes, their father's jawline. He's talking. Gave up Victor's location in exchange for a plea deal. Says Victor's the one who hired the hitman for Hayes and Vincent. Says he was just providing research consultation. Elena's laugh was bitter. Research consultation. He helped steal and corrupt 5 years of my life's work, but sure, consultation. The point is, we have him, and we have Victor's location. SWAT's moving in now. Elena pulled up the final page of Dr. Hayes's notes, the summary protocols.
The elegant solution to the problem of delivering molecular repair to damaged lung tissue without triggering immune response. Done. She uploaded the corrected protocols to the secure server, then initiated the FDA Emergency Submission Protocol. The countdown timer read 0:47:23. Elena attached Isaiah's medical records as supporting documentation, added the comparison showing how the corrupted version would have killed him, wrote a cover letter that was equal parts scientific precision and desperate plea. Then she hit submit. The timer continued counting down. 0:45, 00, 0:44, 59, 0:44, 58. Dr. Chen looked up from her terminal. What happens now? Now we wait. The FDA has an emergency review team for situations like this. If they act fast, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Elena Sterling? The voice was male, official, carrying the weight of government authority. This is Dr. James Whitmore, FDA Emergency Response. We've received your submission regarding Phoenix Protocol corruption. I'm looking at your evidence now. Elena heard keyboard clicks through the phone. This is extensive and troubling. You're saying that the original version scheduled for upload in, he paused, 43 minutes would cause acute respiratory failure in pediatric patients? Yes. We have simulation data showing cascading organ failure within 72 hours of treatment, and you've corrected the protocols based on original research notes from Dr. Rachel Hayes, who is now deceased? Murdered. By the same people who corrupted the protocols. More keyboard clicks. A long silence. Miss Sterling, I'm going to need my team to verify these formulas. That will take approximately 6 hours. We don't have 6 hours. We have 40 minutes before the corrupted version uploads and triggers automatic fast-track authorization based on our earlier successful trials. I understand the timeline pressure, but I cannot authorize emergency approval of corrected protocols without proper verification. The liability. Elena cut him off, her voice dropping to something colder than anger. Dr. Whitmore, look at the attached medical records. 8-year-old boy, severe asthma. 3 hospitalizations this year. The corrupted protocol would kill him in 3 days. The corrected protocol could give him a normal life. There are 200 children just like him waiting for this treatment. If you need verification, verify. But don't let bureaucracy murder them while you're doing it. Silence. Then, give me 2 hours. I'll have the team work in parallel. If your corrections check out, we'll flag the corrupted version and authorize yours instead. Elena closed her eyes. Thank you. She ended the call. The countdown timer read 0:38:12. Mitchell was already coordinating with cybercrimes to extend the delay as long as possible without triggering alerts that would tip off Victor or David's offshore accomplices. Elena slumped in the chair, the adrenaline that had sustained her for the last 4 hours, finally depleting. Dr. Chen brought her water from the lab cooler. You should probably know I'm a huge fan of your work. I wrote my thesis on molecular filtration systems inspired by your father's ventilation designs. Elena looked up, surprised. You knew about my father? Everyone in respiratory research knows Jacob Sterling's work. The tragedy is that he died before seeing how foundational his concepts became. Phoenix doesn't just build on his research. It validates everything he believed about microscale intervention. The words landed somewhere tender. Elena had spent 20 years defending her use of her father's work, explaining, justifying, never quite believing she'd honored him properly. Thank you. It came out smaller than she'd intended. Her phone buzzed. Marcus, Isaiah wants to talk to you. A moment later, a small voice filtered through. Ms. Elena? Hi, Isaiah. Dad says you're saving kids like me. With tiny robots. That's right. Very tiny robots that help lungs work better. That's really cool. Will it hurt? No. You wouldn't even feel them working. They're smaller than anything you can see. A pause. Then, Dad says you're scared it might not work. Your dad's pretty smart. Moms in heaven used to tell me when she was scared, she'd think about the people she loved. Said it made her braver. Elena's throat tightened. Your mom was very wise. You should try it. Think about the kids who need tiny robots. Maybe it'll make you braver too. The call ended. Elena sat holding her phone, tears tracking down her face for the first time since the fire. Mitchell touched her shoulder. You okay? No, but I will be. The countdown timer hit 0. 15, 0, 0.
Elena's phone rang again. Dr. Whitmore. Miss Sterling, we've completed preliminary verification. Your corrections are sound. We're issuing an emergency halt on the corrupted version upload and fast-tracking approval for your corrected protocols. Relief crashed through her like a wave. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. There will be an investigation, depositions, testimony. This kind of sabotage has criminal and civil implications that will take years to untangle. I understand. But Miss Sterling, off the record? Yes? Your father would be proud. The line went dead. The countdown timer hit 0 minutes, 0 seconds, 0 milliseconds. Nothing happened. The corrupted upload never triggered. The corrected protocols sat in FDA systems awaiting final authorization. 200 children would live to see next year. Elena stood, legs shaking from hours of sitting. Mitchell steadied her. Victor? In custody. David's being extradited. The hitman they hired is cooperating in exchange for a reduced sentence. You've got enough evidence to put them both away for life. And the board? Emergency meeting's been canceled. Eleanor Shaw called personally to apologize and confirm your position as CEO. Elena laughed. It sounded hysterical even to her own ears. I think I need to sit down. You're already sitting. Then I need to lie down. Mitchell guided her to the small couch in the corner of the lab where researchers sometimes napped during all-night experiments. Sleep. I'll handle the paperwork. Elena's eyes were already closing. Tell Marcus thank you. For Isaiah's records. For trusting me. Tell him yourself, tomorrow. But Elena was already asleep, the weight of the last 48 hours finally claiming what it was owed. Detective Mitchell stood watch, phone in hand, coordinating the final pieces of an investigation that had started with arson and ended with federal charges that would reshape corporate medical research oversight for a generation. Outside the lab windows, Seattle's lights twinkled in the darkness. The rain had stopped, and somewhere in a basement apartment, a father held his son while they both slept, dreaming of a future where breathing came easy and promises kept themselves.